I talked a little bit about this in the Real Politik group chat, but I watched an amazing film last night, Michael Cimino's Year of the Dragon, and it's like literally one of the No, is it Year of the Dragon? Is it? Have I got that right? It's Year of the
one, yeah, Year of the Dragon.
And it's like one of the most racist films I've ever seen, specifically about the Chinese. It's just like Mickey Rourke is basically Decker. This is like in Mickey Rourke's incredible 80s run when he was like working with all these auteurs and he was like still really good looking. He fucked his face up. And like that was when he was also like, I think like giving money to the IRA and shit. Like just all around Mickey Rourke in the 80s just like fucked hard, man. but basically yeah, he plays in it basically Jack Decker, and he's the complacent fat old chief of police in Chinatown gets laid off by the police. They're like, we're reassigning you fucked it up, we need new blood in Chinatown because they keep being these very cool, elaborately staged, classic Cimino violence, you know, fucking assassinations of leading figures in the Chinese community in fucking New York, whatever American fucking city the film's set in. I didn't really take... It's set in basically China. Like, there actually are some scenes in China which are fucking awesome and must have cost so much. Whether or not they're actually filmed in China, there's like a million extras and elaborate sets and shit. But anyway, like, so he's just basically just dead set on the Chinese mafia. He's like telling the other cops, he's just like, forget the Italians. Like, they're like, hey, why don't you go bust some Italian heads? And he's like, forget the Italians. The Chinese invented the mafia. Did you know that? They invented it 1,000 years ago. And, yeah, so he's just immediately really antagonistic with all the Chinese. He's just like, there's this one guy who's like a smooth young guy who's like, hey, why can't we get along and our old deal work? And he's just like, I'm gonna like piss on your grave. That's how he signs up. he sells
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it'd be so great if you learned Chinese just to insult Chinese people in their own language.
Yeah, and he does use just like so many racial slurs throughout, and so does everybody else. But all the other guys are like, "Hey, why don't you lay off the beep? Like you're obsessed with these goddamn incredibly offensive slurs. Like, what have they ever done to you?" But yeah, he's just dead set on the Chinese, man. He sees Chinese everywhere he goes. He just can't get them out of his head. Yeah, Mickey Rourke's character, no opinion on the Japanese, doesn't care, just completely focused on the Chinese. He comes out with lines such as, this is one I posted in the Real Politik group chat. Oh yeah, he's called Captain White. By the way, the character is literally called White, the avenging fucking angel against the nefarious, what many people describe in the film as the Yellow Man. Like, like, also just worth saying, his wife is such a bitch in the film. It's just one of those films where the heroic leading man's wife is just nagging him constantly. She's like, oh, why have you immediately fallen in love with a beautiful young Chinese newscaster? Oh, why are you always out protecting the streets from the Chinese mafia? And he's just like, I'm sorry, babe, but I'm on a single-handed mission to stop the Chinese in their goddamn Chinese tracks.
Yeah, but like it's like part of a happy ending. His horrible, shrewish wife dies, and he hooks up with a young Chinese woman.
Yeah, I was like messaging you and Geraint about the film, like, and so I like wasn't looking at that bit, and then I looked up and she was just dead, and I was like, oh, presumably she killed herself because of how horribly he's been mistreating her throughout the film. But no, she gets murdered by the Chinese, obviously. Like, yeah, this is a quote from White, from Captain White, I forget his first name. Now, the Chinese are always involved in something, and never involved in nothing. You remember that? It's like,
it's
just...
It's such an anachronism, because in the 80s and 90s, most of the anti-Asian racism was against Japan, because their economy was on the rise and everyone was scared they were going to take over. But, like, the director must have just really hated Chinese people.
Well, apparently Cimino spent years researching the film. Like, I bet he went undercover as a Chinese person. That's exactly the kind of shit that a kind of Kubrickian method director would do.
He did a whole Ben Judah thing, but instead of London, it was Chinatown.
Oh yeah, and the film's co-written by Oliver Stone as well, because like the studio had a really strict deadline, so Cimino didn't have time to like write the entire film himself. So yeah, he drafted in Oliver Stone, who just like put some of the worst fucking dialogue I've ever heard throughout the film. And there's also a random. Yeah.
Imagine, like, when Oliver Stone got the script, it was just anti-Chinese slurs, and Oliver Stone writes an entire script around it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so just got a list of racist thoughts and ideas, just like musings on the Chinese. Like, yeah, I so want you to get you to rewatch this FFF, and we can do a Reel Politik episode on it, because
I've watched it since I was a teenager.
I laughed so much at that fucking film, man. Like, it's seriously funny. But yeah, it was in the 80s, so Oliver Stone would have been doing cocaine at the time. So but you can imagine the conditions under which the script.
I'm sure he still is.
Was yeah, judging by some of the shit he says. But like, oh yeah, the other thing about Oliver Stone is like he only agreed to co-write because like they agreed to fund his film Salvador. That was so it's a quid pro quo thing. Like it wasn't like Oliver Stone was like, right, I want to take down the Chinese this time. It was just like, okay, I've got a big bag of cocaine here. I am gonna hammer out this script, and then I'll have the money to make my film. Awesome movie. Yeah, it's prime movie watching season, isn't it? That's why I've been, cracking out a couple of Ciminos. I watched The Sicilian the other day. Good movie.